Well, what more can we say about MMA in 2016? It was without a doubt the most newsworthy year in the history of this great sport. And it ends on this December 30th, the last event of the year, with two massive pieces of news. First, Ronda Rousey in her long-awaited, much-anticipated return gets knocked out by Amanda Nunes in just 48 seconds. And then the co-main event, Cody Garbrandt out Dominic Cruz himself, defeating him via unanimous decision, and becomes the undisputed UFC Bantamweight King. An unbelievable night. We'll break it down. The night is about to be over, but we got to wrap it up here with my man, Sean Al-Shadi. Sean, great to have you with us here on the wrap-up show here in Las Vegas. It is cold outside, so we're in a tent, trying to be a little warm. I might have to hug you, not because I'm nostalgic about the year that was, just because I'm freezing. Let me ask you about Ronda first. Hindsight is always 20/20, and it's kind of crazy now to look back at everything that happened and then just see how she performed. But can you say that you were shocked by how quickly this fight ended, or were there signs along the way that we should have expected this?
I don't think it's shocking, and I don't think anybody out there that's been following this story for the past 13 months is shocked by this. I feel like we all had a sense that this fight, one way or the other, was going to end quickly, and it did. And to be honest, I mean, me and you were watching a cage side together, and the very first time Amanda Nunes hit Ronda Rousey, in the first couple seconds, we both looked at each other, and it seemed like that was the end, that the fight was going to end at that point. Like, that seemed, at that point, we knew how this fight was going to play out. It was almost, I don't want to say like post-traumatic, like a situation, but she just got that look on her face where I just can't believe this is happening, and there was no head movement at all, and she just looked stiff, and it was stunning to see her like that again, because it was literally mirror images of what would happen 13 months ago, except just a far quicker version of it. And wow, I mean, just what an unbelievable end to, if this is the end. We don't know for a fact that this is the end for Ronda, but what an unbelievable end to a legacy that's, a really great legacy. Someone who pioneered women being able to fight in the UFC, this very great thing, and now we have 3 women's divisions, and eventually we'll probably get 4. And to see it end like this, it was just very strange, to be honest.
The winner and the result doesn't shock me, but perhaps a little shocking was that, I mean, it was literally the first punch that was her undoing. I mean, the first punch rocked her, and then just more punches, as you mentioned, not moving her head, and then eventually, 48 seconds later, Herb Dean steps in, which I thought was 100% the right call. Ronda was out on her feet. Amanda Nunes finishes her. That, in its own right, as you said, very reminiscent of the Holly Holm fight, but a much shorter version of that fight, right? And now, I mean, there's not that much we can actually say about the fight itself, because she seemed like the same fighter. She just didn't know how to respond. Do you think this should be it for her? After seeing what happened against Holly, after seeing what happened tonight, should she not fight again?
I mean, selfishly, I would say no, because I enjoy watching Ronda fight, and I would just like to see her go to an actual team, away from, Edmund and just all of her coaches. I mean, I don't want to be too overly critical of things that I'm not aware of, because we just haven't been privy of what she's been doing for 13 months. But what was the game planning over this time? Because once again, it's her trying to be a boxer, her trying to be, this stand-up fighter, and not using the skills that brought her to the level that she was. But I mean, I don't think that's going to happen. I mean, the idea that she would leave that camp and start anew somewhere else, that doesn't fit with who we think we know who Ronda is. Yeah, man, I honestly think this is the last we've seen of her. I don't, after the way she reacted to the Holly fight, and then, once again, not doing media and just not, I mean, nobody expected her to talk, but I just don't think we'll see her again.
One of my biggest pet peeves when it comes to big-time MMA is when the mainstream media comes in and something happens that they don't expect, and then they go on these rants about how this was a bad night for the sport, the bad night for the UFC. The UFC is sinking. Yes. They're going down, blah, blah, blah. And they said it after 196. They said it to a degree after 200 with the John Jones stuff. But tonight, with Ronda losing this way and her being represented by WME and, the issues with Conor McGregor, was this a really bad night for the UFC?
For the UFC, maybe. I mean, obviously Ronda is probably their second biggest star, and she's probably their biggest mainstream star. So to be able to lose her, and to also just have her take such a dramatic hit, another one, a similar one, that's obviously a loss for them. But I think they got something here. I mean, Amanda Nunes was tremendous tonight in every capacity, in the fight, after the fight, and then in the presser. I mean, she has an incredible story. An immigrant who slept in the gym, who lived in the gym just 5 years ago, and tonight she's making $200,000 plus pay-per-view money. She's gonna buy a house. She has an incredible story, and she already has an incredible personality now that she's starting to let it out. And we saw that after the fight. So if they were able to capitalize on that, that's something. But just in terms of the broad spectrum of the UFC, I mean, certainly this isn't a good outcome for them. And I hate to always go back to Conor, but I mean, my reaction to this is Conor McGregor literally is gonna be able to do whatever he wants in 2017. He is the guy. He is the guy that they're gonna have to pin their whole year on when it comes to these type of big events.
It's not surprising that Ronda didn't speak to the media afterwards. No. I think we all could have predicted that. But do you agree with me that if she just would have showed up, maybe not even take questions, read a statement, said something from the heart about how, bygones be bygones, this is not for me, I'm going to take a break, something just to break that ice, don't you think it would have just worked unbelievable magic for her, that it would have almost erased the last 13 months, the bad blood from this past week? Don't you feel like it would have just been perfect for her, even in a loss, and we'll get to how Dominic Cruz handled his loss, and we know she's on a whole other level, different stratosphere, but just to show up and say something, don't you think that would have been so valuable to her?
Absolutely, and I know we're going to get to Cruz, so I don't want to get too much into it, but what he did tonight in the post-fight presser, just addressing the situation the way he did, was honestly, and I don't want to get too overreactionary, but it was one of the most inspirational things that I've ever seen, just the way he was speaking tonight. If Ronda even came in and did half of that, just 2 minutes quickly of, I'm sorry for everything that's happened over the past 13 months, this isn't for me anymore, and just kind of talked a little bit about how this has been for her, you're right, it would have done wonders. It would have completely at least left this on some level of not a feel-good moment, but a positive moment, some level of just understanding of how she is. Because at this point, again, I mean, she leaves the arena without speaking to anybody. Nobody sees her. Nobody knows how she is. And I'm going to guess that we're not going to see her for a pretty long time in general, in terms of not even MMA media, but just mainstream media. Yeah. So it does leave on a sour note.
You hope that this doesn't affect her Hollywood career. You hope that this doesn't become a part of her legacy, and you hope that people remember that she is a pioneer, that she is a trailblazer, that without her, the UFC probably doesn't even have any women. 115, 135, 145. I think over time, history will be kind to her. You can't ignore what happened in these last two fights and how she handled them, but we have to remember who she is, who she was, and you hope that she can handle the loss a little better than the last time. It remains to be seen. I'm being told that physically she's fine, just emotionally she's obviously very upset right now. So let's talk about Amanda Nunes, because as you said, this is a person who handled everything up until this point perfectly. The fight was flawless. The post-fight comments, the celebrations were entertaining in their own right. This is a person who at UFC 196, maybe the biggest show of the year, beat Valentina Shevchenko, fine fight. At UFC 200, annihilates Miesha Tate, breaks the unbreakable, and then maybe tonight retires Ronda Rousey. What a star they have on their hands if they can promote her the right way. Are you confident they can promote her the right way?
I don't know. I'll be honest, I don't know, but there's no reason for them not to be able to. You just said she retired Ronda Rousey possibly. She did retire Miesha Tate. I mean, those are the two biggest stars in the history of 135 for women. That alone is enough. And then you add on everything else that Amanda Nunes already is, where she came from, the struggles she's gone through. I mean, this is a woman who has gone through real, immense personal struggle to be able to rise to where she is now. And just the way she reacted even after the fight, going over and shushing Edmund, and I won't swear, but I knew I was gonna beat the S out of Ronda Rousey, and coming here and just talking as freely as she did, and she's even saying like Edmund was putting these crazy ideas in Ronda's head of that she's a boxer. We're seeing her open up now. And it was wonderful, and you even take it back to Thursday at the weigh-ins, coming in with the lion mask, and we get this iconic photo from our own Esther Lynn of her turning and looking at Ronda with the lion's mask, and it's this incredible shot. She handled all of this so well, and it gives the UFC so much material to be able to promote her, if they're able to, if they want to.
Yeah, you hope that she got the rub a little bit. Probably would have had more rub had they promoted her more going into the fight and had Ronda spoke and engaged with her. But
also, I mean, the first openly gay champion. That's
Yeah.
just there's so many elements to her that are you could work with.
But what a difference a year makes in this division, because now, we have this #1 contender fight between Shevchenko and Juliana Pena. And, let's be honest, the two biggest draws in the history of women's MMA are not around right now. And so they have a lot of work to do, and they should, Dana White showed up to the press conference in the back and was watching her speak and then kind of just abruptly left. You hope that they will now recognize what they have with Amanda Nunes. Okay, let's talk about the co-main event.
Oh my goodness.
I mean, we had the privilege of watching that live, and very early on we were saying to each other, like, something weird is happening. A star is being born in front of us. Cody Garbrandt put on one of the greatest performances as a challenger in a title fight that I've ever seen. Out Dominic Cruz, the Dominator, right? I mean, the head movement, the hand speed, the antics, everything. He was on point. He dropped him. He made Dominic Cruz look slow. He made Dominic Cruz look like he wasn't at his level, which is an amazing thing to say about the greatest bantamweight of all time, a man who hasn't lost in almost 10 years. The last time he lost was March of 2007. He's only lost once in his career. I mean, it's unfathomable what he did to Dominic Cruz. Put it into words. Do you feel as highly about the performance as I did?
Absolutely, and you're right. That was a star-making performance. That was there were so many moments in that fight where we just you could feel the tension in the arena was so thick, and it was just such an incredible performance. This was a guy, he was styling on Dominic Cruz.
Yeah.
He's breakdancing in the middle of the cage. He's just putting his hands down and just moving his head and dodging everything. His defense tonight was tremendous. He really did outperform, I think, even anybody's wildest expectations, and it was. I have him as my fighter of the year now, which I didn't think. I was always going to have the winner of that fight as probably my number 2 fighter of the year. To me, to what he did to Dominic Cruz tonight, he absolutely deserves it. 4-0 with a win over, like you said, the bantamweight GOAT at this point, and just all these first-round finishes. It's unbelievable, and I really do believe the UFC has a star on their hands with him.
Yeah, and you talk about a year that had amazing performances from Michael Bisping, Stipe Miocic, Amanda Nunes, Conor McGregor. For Cody Garbrandt to get that, and you can very much make that case, says a lot about who he is. And yes, they have a star. He's got the look, he's got the talk, he's got the fighting skills. It's amazing. Now, interestingly enough, he said afterwards he wants to give Dominic Cruz an immediate rematch. Right before that fight, TJ Dillashaw had a virtuoso performance in his own right against John Lineker, completely dominated John Lineker, and he obviously has, a say in the matter as well. What do you make of Cody saying that he wants to give Dominic the rematch, who, by the way, Dominic said he has no problem with TJ? What a strange, little triangle that is. What do you make of it, and what would you do if you're the UFC?
Yeah, the bantamweight division is really in a fantastic place right now with the 3 of them and then everybody else that's coming up, all the young guys. It's interesting because you can't really go wrong wherever you go. I mean, the rematch would obviously be interesting. Personally, though, I would like to see TJ Dillashaw versus Cody Garbrandt. The storyline there sells itself. Former teammates, they've already sniped at each other throughout the week and throughout the lead up to this fight. But just also, man, the stylistic clash of that fight would be so tremendous. That to me is my most anticipated fight of 2017 now, and I hope they make it.
What impressed you most about what Cody did in there? Because there's a lot to choose from.
Like I said, the defense was one. Just the ability to flow as well as he did, and he really did out Dominic, which is something he made Dominic. I mean, this year Dominic his story was tremendous. I mean, coming back from all that he's had to come back from it and beating TJ and then just destroying Faber. But Dominic looked slow out there today. Garbrandt made him look slow and old and just like he was out of sorts the entire time, like he was moving through mud. It was unbelievable. I cannot say enough good things about Cody Garbrandt tonight.
Yeah, and good for Team Alpha Male. They finally get one back on Dominic Cruz. You're right, Faber was here, massive smile on his face, and good for that young coaching staff. They were kind of in shambles when Dwayne Ludwig left and then Martin Kampman. Now you have Justin Buchholz, a former UFC fighter, Chris Holdsworth, former UFC fighter, Danny Castillo, former UFC fighters. These young guns kind of bringing Cody up. And Cody was the guy who said, we're going to be fine. Dwayne's gone, TJ's gone, we're going to be fine, and look what happened tonight.
Absolutely. He was he was the guy who was leading that charge the most. When everyone was so worried and concerned about what was going on with Team Alpha Male, Cody was always the guy who was sitting there saying, no, we're fine with what we have. And just hearing him tonight talk, he mentioned that he began the year unranked. Yeah. And he ends the year like this. That's crazy, man. To be able to do that over the course of a calendar year and just, I don't know, it blows me away, to be honest. And to the whole the idea of Dominic Cruz being, this one specter that always like floated above Team Alpha Male. He was the guy that every single person was trying to go. They were vying for him. They were throwing guy after guy after guy after him, and they just could not figure him out. And then Cody comes out and just does what he does and completely blows it out of the water. It was unbelievable.
Gave me goosebumps when he talked about years ago, writing on a piece of paper that in 2017 he'd be a UFC champion, and he beat it by 2 days. And talk about goosebumps. I mean, I had tears in my eyes when I saw that he was walking out with Maddox Maple, this young boy who had leukemia, who he met when he was 5 years old, when Maddox was 5 years old in Ohio. And made him a promise, if you beat cancer, I'll get to the UFC. And here they are walking to their first UFC title fight, I should say. And then when he wins the belt, he gives it to Maddox and just gives him all the praise and love. I mean, that's just beautiful stuff from Cody Garbrandt. What an absolute gentleman and a class act. And speaking of which, Dominic Cruz, let's talk about that, because to me, one of my favorite things about covering this sport is seeing how great champions act in kind of moments of despair, more so than in victory, how they act in defeat, how they handle themselves. And that's why I was so impressed with Conor McGregor, how he handled the Nate Diaz loss, and why I wasn't impressed with Ronda Rousey, to be honest, and how Dominic handled the loss tonight, his first in almost a decade, to me just blew me away. I mean, again, talk about the blueprint being shown to young fighters on how to deal with defeat. What did you take from it?
What a class act. Like, we are really just genuinely lucky as a sport to have a person like Dominic Cruz in it. I mean, that was, I said it earlier in this, and that was just genuinely one of the most inspirational moments I've seen in this sport. Again, like you said, his first loss in 10 years. He's already overcome so much, and to go out there and lose in the fashion that he did in a show this big, and then to just face the music and be so upfront and honest, and it was blew me away too. I mean, you said it blew you away. It was literally a masterclass of how to handle defeat.
Yeah, he blew me away in January when he said that, and I mentioned this time and again, when he said that the happiest moment of his life was when he realized he didn't need a belt to be happy. And, I feel like just going through all that he did in those 3 years with the knee injuries kind of prepared him for these moments, and he's a much better person because of it. To see him stand up and to say, he doesn't need to sit down because he's always on his feet. I mean, and then just walk off.
Perfect ending.
Dominic Cruz is really a credit to MMA. It's unbelievable to watch him mature as a human being. TJ Dillashaw had a great performance, and I thought it was maybe his best since the Barao fights. And I thought at UFC 200 he needed to have a performance like that to really cement his place as the #1 contender, and he didn't get a title fight after that win over Rafael Sansao. I think he did what he didn't do at 200. Do you agree? Tonight.
Absolutely. I mean, it was a completely and utterly dominant performance, and it was nice to see him go back to his wrestling. Actually, I mean, he didn't get sucked into John Lineker's game at all. Lineker likes the Lineker, and he just likes to suck those people into brawls and wing these wild hooks. And TJ was having none of it, man. He grounded him. He was nailing him with this hard ground and pound. Lineker's a madman. He's smiling through it and like pushing his head into TJ's elbows and things. That guy's head is made out of concrete. But TJ was very impressive tonight. And then, he even got on the mic and he did what he doesn't like to do. And he cut a little promo and set up the next fight. He did a very good job of setting up the next fight.
Okay, let's quickly wrap things up here. Other results of note: Dong Young Kim with a controversial win over Tarek Saffiedine, but really sort of an uneventful fight. Ray Borg, who missed weight by 3.5 pounds yesterday, defeats Luis Smolka. Looked very good in the victory, but that little blunder hangs over his head. Neil Magny defeats Johnny Hendricks in maybe a controversial fight to some, but I don't know. I had it 29-28 for Neil Magny. I thought he stole it at the end. What'd you think?
Yeah, I had it 29-28 for Neil Magny. I thought at the end of round 1 and round 3, when he has him in the tight submissions and just the persistence to be able to keep working, I thought he stole those rounds.
Shoeface with a nice win. Of course, Antonio Carlos Jr. Who else should we talk about? Is there anyone else? Nico Price. I mean, this guy made his UFC debut against Brandon Thatch, somewhat unknown, and came in there and really backed up some talk this week.
Alex Garcia.
So is there anyone else that you want to pinpoint before we go? I know it was a short kind of fight card, but anyone else before we go?
I mean, again, Alex Garcia, that was a tremendous knockout. You almost have to wonder if we're going to see Mike Pyle again.
Yeah.
He seemed very angry with himself afterwards. We were able to see it on the monitors. And he's 41 years old. This is back-to-back really bad knockouts. We'll see if we see him again. But, I mean, Alex Garcia came into the UFC with a lot of promise, and now he seems to be fulfilling it.
Yeah, and speaking of controversy, the first fight of the night ended in controversy with Tim Means and
Yes.
and Alex Oliveira fighting to a no contest when it really should have been a DQ. It was an illegal knee, and there was some confusion on the broadcast. Very bizarre,
Ridiculous
but
that
by
there
now that feels like it was 10 years ago, right?
Yeah, it does, and it was ridiculous that there was confusion on the broadcast
Sure.
because that's always been illegal, and I don't understand how that everybody didn't understand that that was illegal if you have a knee down that's inherently a down fighter. I don't know how there was any discussion on that, but yeah, you feel bad for Tim Means. I mean, he was very upset afterwards, to put it lightly.
And again, as I said at the top, 2016, without a doubt, the most newsworthy year in MMA, tumultuous at times, exciting at times, and fitting on this night to very big news stories. But also, let's quickly acknowledge, tonight marks the last night for Joe Silva as a UFC employee, the longest tenured employee. He started working for the UFC before Dana White, Lorenzo Fertitta, Frank Fertitta, the matchmaker to the stars, as the greatest matchmaker in the business. I got him confused with Burt Watson, the babysitter to the stars. But yes, as Joe Rogan always used to call him at the weigh-ins, best matchmaker in the business. Joe Silva, no longer with the company, he retires. And Mike Goldberg, the longtime voice of the UFC, also.
He also predates the Zuffa era.
Yep. Calling his last fight tonight. Not a lot of fanfare about their final shows, but very, very, very important parts of this great sports history. I'll put you on the spot. How do you remember 2016? What's your moment when you're going to look back on this year in 10 years, 20 years with your grandchildren, your little ones running around, the little Al-Shadis? What are you going to tell them about 2016?
The single most chaotic year that I've ever seen in this business, ever, and it's not even close. You take everything that happened with we had so many different new champions. We had so many upsets. Michael Bisping became champion. No one expected that. You had USADA wrecking havoc across the ranks. The UFC sold for $4 billion, and just Conor McGregor and Nate Diaz, their rivalry, and then Conor goes to New York and wins 2 belts, and just the whole thing. This whole year has been month after month of just big, huge, incredible moments.
Yeah. Unbelievable when you think about it.
Yes.
January, what happened? February, what happened? March. Almost every month has its own moment of the year. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You had a great year as well. So kudos, my man. Well done. I'll give you my moment of the year, and I'll go personal. And I'm sorry if this breaks rules and it breaks some of my own rules, but if you can indulge me, it was a bit of a strange year for us around 6 months ago. And to be honest, I will never ever forget what so many of the people out there watching did for us during those 48 hours, because if they didn't do what they did during those 48 hours in June, I'm fairly certain I would not be standing here, Casey would not be over there, maybe Esther wouldn't be over there in this tent. They saved us, and the great fans of this sport, what they did for us is the greatest. They gave us the greatest gift that any fan can give a journalist or anything like that. They gave us our access back, and it was something that I'll never forget, and I continuously feel like I personally need to repay all of you. What you guys did for us in June is the kindest thing that any strangers have ever done for me personally, and I think I can speak for my colleagues as well. You were so kind, and I think about it all the time, and we will continue to work to give you guys such great coverage for however long we do this, because of what you did for us throughout those 48 hours in June. So again, thank you, because like I said, we wouldn't have the privilege, the absolute privilege of covering these events in person if you guys didn't do what you did, and you know exactly what you did. So again, from the bottom of our hearts, thank you so much for what you did back in June. Thank you for a great year. Thank you to all the fighters for the most memorable year of our respective careers, and we hope that everyone will have a safe and happy 2017, a healthy 2017, and we look forward to many, many more great fights to cover next year, because if 2016 was any indication, 2017 is going to be a wild ride as well. For now, we will say goodnight. Again, thank you so much for watching not only our coverage this week in Las Vegas, but all year long from all over the world. We sincerely appreciate it. We can't thank you enough, and we'll see you next year. Good night.
And wow, I mean, just what an unbelievable end to, if this is the end. We don't know for a fact that this is the end for Ronda, but what an unbelievable end to a legacy that's, a really great legacy. Someone who pioneered women being able to fight in the UFC, this very great thing, and now we have 3 women's divisions, and eventually we'll probably get 4. And to see it end like this, it was just very strange, to be honest.
The winner and the result doesn't shock me, but perhaps a little shocking was that, I mean, it was literally the first punch that was her undoing. I mean, the first punch rocked her, and then
And to be honest, I mean, me and you were watching a cage side together, and the very first time Amanda Nunes hit Ronda Rousey, in the first couple seconds, we both looked at each other, and it seemed like that was the end, that the fight was going to end at that point. Like, that seemed, at that point, we knew how this fight was going to play out. It was almost, I don't want to say like post-traumatic, you know, like a situation, but she just got that look on her face where I just can't believe this is happening, and there was no head movement at all, and she just looked stiff, and it was stunning to see her like that again, because it was literally mirror images of what would happen 13 months ago, except just a far quicker version of it.
Well, what more can we say about MMA in 2016? It was without a doubt the most newsworthy year in the history of this great sport. And it ends on this December 30th, the last event of the year, with 2 massive pieces of news. First, Ronda Rousey, in her long-awaited, much-anticipated return, gets knocked out by Amanda Nunes in just 48 seconds. And then the co-main event, Cody Garbrandt out Dominic Cruz himself, defeating him via unanimous decision, and becomes the undisputed UFC bantamweight king. An unbelievable night. We'll break it down. The night is about to be over, but we got to wrap it up here with my man Sean Al-Shadi. Sean, just more punches, as you mentioned, not moving her head, and then eventually, 48 seconds later, Herb Dean steps in, which I thought was 100% the right call. Ronda was out on her feet. Amanda Nunes finishes her. That, in its own right, as you said, very reminiscent of the Holly Holm fight, but a much shorter version of that fight, right? And now, I mean, there's not that much we can actually say about the fight itself, because she seemed like the same fighter. She just didn't know how to respond. Do you think this should be it for her? After seeing what happened against Holly, after seeing what happened tonight, should she not fight again?
I mean, selfishly, I would say no, because I enjoy watching Ronda fight, and I would just like to see her go to an actual team, away from.
Great to have you with us here on the wrap-up show here in Las Vegas. It is cold outside, so we're in a tent, trying to be a little warm. I might have to hug you, not because I'm nostalgic about the year that was, just because I'm freezing. Let me ask you about Ronda first. Hindsight is always 20/20, and it's kind of crazy now to look back at everything that happened and then just see how she performed. But can you say that you were shocked by how quickly this fight ended, or were there signs along the way that we should have expected this?
I don't think it's shocking, and I don't think anybody out there that's been following this story for the past 13 months is shocked by this. I feel like we all had a sense that this fight, one way or the other, was going to end quickly, and it did. And